an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 2, Episode 1, Resurrection. In this episode, we get to see what has changed since the end of Season 1, and it turns out, well, Guillermo, for one, has been very busy. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Max, I don't think that you're here in the chat, but if you are, hi. So this was a hell of a fucking season opener. I really, really enjoyed this episode. I am, you guys, last episode I spent a great deal of time just talking about how overall what they're deciding to do with Guillermo seems like genius to me. And I can't help but be impressed again because they didn't have to do the sort of like break that they did after the season. When we come back for season 2, it starts off with like, oh, a lot has happened since last summer. And that what they're doing, I think, is they're supposed to be trying to keep up this, fake documentary pretense. So, the amount of time that has passed since the end of the last episode, we're acting like that time actually passed. And I wasn't expecting that. And because I wasn't expecting that, I didn't think that we were going to have a series of events that had gone on that we are going to be walking in on after the fact and having explained to us. And there are a bunch of things here that get dealt with that I wasn't expecting. So the first thing that I should cover things more in order, but I can't help myself. I was really not sure whether or not the escape from the vampiric council was going to be treated as an actual thing that we needed to worry about. And I think I said I would be fine if it wasn't. I would like for there to be more continuity, but if they decided that wasn't how they wanted to treat the show, I wouldn't be mad about it. However, I was also aware the show does tend to have surprising interest in continuity. They will drop something for a couple episodes and you'll think that they've forgotten it, and then it'll suddenly crop up again. But the escape from the vampiric council happened 3 episodes before the finale maybe 2. So it seemed like if it wasn't going to be addressed in the finale itself, then maybe they just weren't going to do anything with it. And I don't know if they had planned on opening season 2 like this, or if this was a decision after the fact, but it doesn't matter. This works so well. The vampiric council is, I think they are the ones sending these vampire assassins. So Guillermo is over here just fucking staking vampires all the time. It seems like there's one a day, one every other day. It's frequent. And I don't think that we are told exactly what happens to a vampire when he's killed. I mean, we saw with the Baron that there was just crispy bits left, and they bury him because there's something to bury. But I don't know, when these guys get staked, it looks like they just remain there as a full corpse and they're just dead. It's not like Buffy, where as soon as you get staked, you explode into a pile of ash and dust, and thus conveniently leave our protagonist to move on with their lives without having a body to dispose of. And while I understand how sort of eye-rollingly convenient that conceit is, I also do really like it. So seeing that Guillermo is having to hide these bodies and dispose of them, he already is so stressed. There is so much going on this episode, and I'm really happy to see that the actor playing him, and I'm going to check out what his name is because I can't remember. I don't actually know if I've ever looked up what his name is. He really is excellent, and I don't think that I have seen him in other things. He was in The Magicians, but he is frequently given sort of like a bit role that feels like he always is cast as somebody like a little bit pitiful. And getting to see him in a role where, yeah, he is certainly a little bit pitiful, but he has a lot more to do. I feel like what an opportunity. I'm so glad that we are reaching a point in general in comedy. I feel like isn't fair because this has been comedy has been more of a jumping off point for people who are like unconventionally attractive than anywhere. But I feel like there are a lot of circumstances where he could have been completely overlooked his entire life, and I don't want it to seem like I'm just harping on his appearance all the time. It's just that as somebody who is heavy and does not see myself represented very often at all, I am always cheering for anybody who is heavier and is being cast in like very, very successful stuff. And they're being cast in a very important role within that successful property. So I keep coming back to that, not because I'm trying to like demean him or act like, oh, you should be grateful you got given this opportunity. I'm just like really glad that he doesn't, there's something that has happened a lot. I feel like with, there's two different paths that a lot of heavy comics can take. And I say comics to sort of encompass all of like comedic acting, improv, all that. And usually what path you took was heavily dependent on your gender. So if you were a woman comic who was heavy, a lot of your comedy had to center around being self-deprecating about that. And it would be sort of like the feature of what you were talking about. If you were a guy, there was certainly a bit of self-deprecation required as well. Like that's just going to be inherent if you're heavy. But with guys, it was, you were supposed to sort of like make up for that with loudness and overall ridiculousness to sort of like distract from it is the word I want to use. And a quiet performance like his wasn't so much a thing, I'm just very excited about this, and I didn't expect what he did to be such a major part of the story. I kind of thought he was always going to be a sort of side, sad little like down note every episode. And instead, he's getting to be like the feature for me. The vampires are delightful, but he is the linchpin that's keeping everything in orbit, Harvey Guillen. I hope I'm saying his name right. So, and also this episode, guys, we get Benedict Wong. Now that I'm looking at IMDb, I'm not going to try and pretend that I like knew his name. I don't know anybody's names. Benedict Wong, though, I mean, many of us would recognize him from such blockbusters as Doctor Strange. He gets to have so much fun here, too. It's just such a great episode. So, we start off addressing yet another thing that I had questions about, which was whether or not they were ever going to get another familiar. And it turns out that they have gone through, I think they say 7 over this past summer. And we see a series of terrible accidents. I kind of thought that when they claimed that it was an accident, that we were going to see how every single one of these instances was actually Nadja or Laszlo's fault, and they were simply not taking responsibility for that. But no, once you watch it, it does seem like they actually are accidents, and everybody who has worked for them has been incompetent and clumsy AF. There's an amazing joke where Nandor becomes a vapor and he gets sucked into an air purifier and he comes out the other side and his hair has gone white and his beard has gone white, and it's really like, it is such a stupid joke. Don't care. It's still great. Colin, I spent so much time at the DMV, they finally just gave me a license. I did what any young, handsome man would do, and I went and bought a classic convertible, put the top down, blasted some tunes, and blocked the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel. I love this so much, guys. There's like a security camera view of him blocking the entire entrance and then just feeding on the frustration of everybody who is blocked. Honestly, if the whole rest of the season where Colin was concerned was just him getting up to antics because of having a car now, I would not be mad at that, because bad driving truly is one of the things that makes me want to hit the ceiling. And I think a lot of us have this thing where we can simultaneously know we're overreacting, but we still do the overreacting. And it's like, I don't want to feel this enraged. I don't want to be like this, but also I definitely hope that person drops dead immediately, because the world should be better off without them. Like, I just use your signal light. That's like the number one thing. Holy shit, guys. I don't understand what's so fucking hard about it. It's literally flicking a little, like, you know what? People will be all mystified, like, nobody's letting me into that lane. They don't know you're trying to get into that lane. Or they'll just start slowing down, and you have no idea what they're trying to do. Oh, it turns out they're going to take that right. But how would you know they were doing that? You don't. They just start slowing down inexplicably. You're supposed to be going 60 miles an hour on this main thoroughfare, and now they're hitting the brakes and nobody knows why. I swear to God. So there's a lot of fertile ground there if you want to do that. It's sort of, again, up in the air, because the show is so inspired in so many ways that I feel like anytime that I put forth an idea, I think that anything I say is going to be a pale shadow of what they come up with. And it's such a great feeling, to be perfectly honest. Like, I am always saddened when I'm sort of spitballing during a show and I realize that I've come up with like a way better idea than the original material. And that doesn't happen super often, but it happens often enough that I feel almost like, you know, I'm getting into, I start to like get high on myself a little bit. And it's like, well, it's real easy to come up with a better idea when all of the characters and the world building has been done for you and you can just spin a wild fan fiction out of it. I acknowledge that. But nevertheless, there are times where what an author chooses to do with what I think is a universe full of possibility is so boring and trite and predictable that I can't believe they bothered to write it down. And then there are properties like this where it really feels like they get stoned, sit around a table, eat snacks, have a couple beers, and just wildly spitball while they're just spinning complete hypotheticals out of these stories. And then when something particularly hits, they're like, there it is. You know, they don't, the show doesn't feel like they have a plot in mind that they're trying to get through. They don't have like, you know, beats that they're attempting to hit because they need a certain thing to happen. And that might not be true. They may be actually working through certain specific beats that they want to hit. The point is, though, that it doesn't feel like that. It feels so organic, and it just does seem motivated by the characters and their like personalities and choices. It's so rare to come across this. It's so exciting to watch it unfolding. And I can't believe that there's like 2 whole more seasons and then a new one that's going to be coming out. I'm just so delighted with this, guys. This is like, I really feel that I don't like, there are other comedies that I think have hit with me more like in general, but I look back and I'm like, well, probably it's because they have a certain comfort factor for me, because I don't watch a lot of newer comedy. The things that I've watched recently that one could put in the comedy category are Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and Fleabag. Fleabag, I feel like comedy asterisk, you know, and they were both so good. I don't want to even try comparing this show to them because we're too early and it's such a tonally different concept. But I will say that in a lot of ways, this show feels like one of the more experimental, and it's certainly a really original concept, you know. I'm just very into it. I'm sorry, I'm just fangirling over here. I'm so happy with how this all went. So we get to see, like I said, a montage of all of these different familiars dying. And I love the fact that one of them, she lights her hair on fire, and Nadja goes and gets like an extinguisher, but she just starts putting out the fire on the drapes and lets the familiar run around with her hair on fire and does absolutely nothing to help her. And she asks Laszlo if he remembers Joey. And he says, oh, no, I'm not that familiar. And they both start giggling. But then she interrupts and she's like, his intestines came straight out of his bum. That doesn't sound like an accident. That sounds like something really awful happened. Like, what the fuck was that? I want to know. So this is when we check in with Guillermo. So first of all, he's been spending a lot of time hiding and eating chocolate-covered espresso beans because these assassins have started showing up, and he doesn't want to sleep because he's afraid that something is going to happen to his friends, in quotes, if he isn't awake to take care of it. And the first like moments of checking back in with him this season, he's feeding what looks like a squirrel a chocolate-covered espresso bean, and that squirrel turns into a vampire and tries to run inside, and he stakes the vampire, hides the body, uses some like aerosol spray to cover the smell, and then says, that's the 10th vampire I killed this month. These vampire assassins keep trying to kill Nandor, Nadja, and Laszlo ever since they escaped from the Vampiric Council. And he is doing this to like protect them and help them, but he can't actually tell them that he's doing it because being a vampire killer, understandably, they would probably frown upon that. And what a great... there's like a couple things about this that I really love. First of all, we just fucking go to 11. You know, the end of the last season was like, oh no, is Guillermo like descended from vampire killers? And is he going to, you know, have to fight his nature? And then the second season starts and they're like, oh no, he's like killed like 36 vampires over the summer. Like, yeah, no, he's been doing it. Like, it's not even a ramping up. We just get dropped into the middle of like an epidemic. All about it. I love it. I have said this so many times with so many other things, that there are tropes that I'm so used to that I don't realize I'm expecting them until you don't do them. And then I'm suddenly like, why does this feel weird? Oh, it's because I had a like whole thought that I took for granted would happen. And the slow ramping up of Guillermo dealing with his like heritage and his impulses, that is such a trope, you know, that I didn't even realize. I was assuming that's how it was going to go. So the fact that he's out here already killing so many vampires that he's like a fucking pro at it now, not expected and just delightful. I'm into it. So, and, we have a couple of moments where, like, Nadja doesn't realize what he's doing. And she yells at him for making so much noise because she's trying to sleep. Also, I should mention that all of the vampire assassins look the same. I think they may actually be the same actor, but they all look much more Nosferatu-esque than other vampires. Like, because most vampires we've seen, they just look like, dudes, just some chick, and they just happen to also be vampires. But these guys, they look like weirdos. They look weird. And if you saw them on the street, you'd definitely be like, is that a motherfucking vampire that I just walked past? So, yeah, he is chowing down on these chocolate-covered espresso beans. There's a bit where Nandor interrupts, and he has spilled the chocolate-covered espresso beans all over the floor of the bathroom. And Nandor just thinks that he's, like, basically shitting pellets like a rabbit, and tells him you should really drink more water before he closes the door. And all of that, by the way, is in the cold open. That's like before we even get to credits. So, they finally found a good familiar, Topher. This dude, he sucks so bad. What I love about him is how, like, familiar he feels, because I think we have all worked with this guy before. Somebody who is absolutely, like, unmatched at kissing ass while making it seem like he's just being himself, and at, like, skiving off, essentially, and giving all of his work to somebody else, but making a really good show of it anytime he does anything, so that he gets over-credited for very small acts while somebody else is actually doing the majority of the real labor. And honestly, him being a white guy is just, like, totally perfect as well, because that just frequently tends to be who can get away with this sort of thing. And I'm not at all saying that's the only type of person, but it is, like, just so many more instances of running into this in life have been white men, that I just appreciate that that's who they picked for this. And it's not just that he is so fake about what he's doing and how much he's doing, because the thing about this sort of thing is that there are people who will try and, like, kiss ass, but they're also, some of those people, they kiss ass because they are so concerned with their own position, and they become sort of antagonistic to their peers because they see those people as threats to them. And he isn't like that. What goes on with Topher is that he tries to be likable to Guillermo also, even while knowing he's screwing Guillermo over. And I say that, like, I fully think Topher knows what he's doing. I don't think this is an unconscious, like, And so he does this incredibly frustrating thing where he acts so chill about pulling this bullshit that it makes you feel like if you call him out, you are overreacting somehow, or, like, being unreasonable. And I have just run into this so many times, and it's the sort of thing that I think surprises people. If you listen to the show a lot, I think you get an image of me as being, like, an incredibly assertive, outspoken, gregarious person. And the truth is that's not actually me at all. I'm really good like that when I'm around people I know. And I will be much more vocal about, like, 'cause it's sort of a weird thing where there's the whole trope in Harry Potter about how, like, it's difficult to stand up to your friends. That's not been my experience. I feel much more comfortable standing up to my friends than I do strangers. And the reason for that is I second guess what's actually happening in front of my face a lot of the time when I'm around strangers, because since I don't know a person well, I'll kind of be like, they didn't mean it like I think they meant that, did they? like that kind of thing where I spend so much time going back over what I just saw or heard or what was said to me, that by the time I think to actually do anything about it, the moment has sort of passed, you know? This happens a lot. And I just have to consult with another person who was there and be like, did they actually say this? Like, am I remembering this right? Whereas with my friends, I know who they are, and I know if they will have meant to say XYZ or the other. And if they say the other, I can call them out because we're friends, and I know that they will understand where I'm coming from on it and not get super defensive, and we'll be able to have a conversation. But in regular life, with strangers, with service people, if I'm getting my hair done, my nails done, my makeup done, like I did for my wedding and it went really badly and I didn't have the balls to say anything, I just keep everything to myself and don't want to start shit. And especially when you're working with somebody and that person seems to be on the boss's good sides, and you know that if you are seen starting a scene with them, you won't be the one that they believe or whose side they take. Yeah, you just shy away from it. And this dude knows, like Topher knows that's Guillermo's personality because he is aware of how much this means to Guillermo. And when I say that, it makes it sound like he's really sly and trying to like investigate and find information to use against Guillermo. And that's not what I mean at all. It's more like he can just sense that Guillermo's in a more fragile place with it all. And he can sort of like fuck with him because of that. And it's not even something that I think he's consciously doing. I think it's just so innate because he always is looking for the path of least resistance and the easiest way to do anything, that without even realizing it, he is attempting to manipulate those around him while telling himself he's just being a nice guy. He's just being friendly. He's just being whatever. And it's like, yeah, but you know that's not all that's going on here. Like, you definitely know. So all of that said, there's a really interesting scene. So Topher, like, we get to see a bunch of instances of him just like pretending to work as soon as they walk in, while otherwise he's just on his phone and laying on the couch. I really love when they talk about his resume and they admit that they don't actually know what any of this stuff means, but we get a look at it. I'm going to pause right here. Okay. Topher Delmonico Doze Apples drinks at dozeapples.com. Education, Lehigh University, Go Mountain Hawks, BS Business and Economics. Tau Omega Sigma, hashtag love and respect to my hashtag brothers. Work experience, Instagram social media consultant. Skills, Microsoft Excel, hashtag spreadsheets, hashtag organized. Hit me up for some sick pics at TopherDog12345, spinning Dave Matthews on hashtag vinyl, hashtag musical genius. Oh my God. It's all nothing, but they are so impressed with it because they don't understand any of this. So yeah, he jumps up and grabs the duster out of Guillermo's hand at one point. And he has like a Bluetooth headset on the whole time that I sort of guess is supposed to be part of his whole I'm a business guy, I'm actually like an entrepreneur thing that he's doing. And as he is getting literal hugs from Laszlo, literally, Nandor comes in with a cloak that he dragged through shit, and he expects Guillermo to take care of it, even though Topher offers to assist. And I can't tell if he offers to assist actually intending to do that, or if he has created such a rapport with all of them that he knows even if he offers, they will refuse him. I kind of feel like it's that second one, like he's aware that the relationship they have by now and that he can get away with it, but I'm not totally sure. So then we have this scene where he starts talking about the Doe's Apples hard cider, and he and Guillermo are, I think they're like polishing boots or something like this. And Guillermo says something about how he can, like, yeah, you're really cool, and is trying to be like nice, but obviously is seething with rage, and tells him maybe that he should be a little bit more respectful because at this rate, he's never going to get made into a vampire. To which Topher replies, to be honest, I don't really care about being a vampire. And Guillermo completely has no idea how to react to this. This is something that he looks so incredibly angry in the moment. And when we go to like the little booth, you know, when they're off by themselves getting interviewed, he says, who doesn't want to be a vampire? What are you doing if you don't? And Topher says, maybe I would like to be a warlock. That would be cool, right? So I guess we're going to have warlocks exist now, which we see later. Like there's a necromancer this episode. So sure. But when he said that, I was like, wait, is that real? So that is the fact that he is here and he is managing to steal all of Guillermo's thunder while basically, like, he's sort of positioned to cash in on being a vampire sooner rather than later. If they like him as much as they seem to, I could see them being like, well, why don't we make him an actual friend of ours that we hang out with instead of, you know, a servant. I don't know. I don't really know, because we saw Nadja choose to transform Jenna, and I don't really remember exactly what motivated her to. I feel like she felt bad for Jenna and wanted to give her power. So I don't know if that would apply here, but I can understand Guillermo feeling like he is more likely to get turned than himself. And the fact that he is just sort of squandering that, yeah, I can understand how that would really get to you. I kind of loved this. The idea that he's like just a natural, but doesn't even want it. Oh, yeah. This guy too, who's playing Topher, I have never seen him before, but God, he's really good at being obnoxious. Guillermo, for his part, is like certain that Topher is going to change his mind. And just is sort of waiting for it to sink in, like, oh no, he is going to want to be a vampire. We also see Topher bonding with Colin and explaining the minutia of this like fake money, and for, you know, that's a promo thing with the cider, and that it's something that Colin can use to frustrate cashiers and then feed on them. This kind of, like, this is honestly, this dude is really good at this. You know, I mean, he even offers to be fed upon. And Colin says, I want to, Topher, but I'm having a pickle of a time draining you. And he just says, I know, I'm sorry. Like, I know you're trying to bore me, but I actually find everything that you say is so interesting. I feel like that has to actually be true. I would think he was full of shit if it weren't for the fact that there's like an actual physiological reaction that people have to Colin, and Topher doesn't seem to be having it. So I think he's being fucking serious, where he is like compelled a little bit by what Colin talks about. And it's just not producing the frustration that Colin needs. Like, I can't wrap my head around this. And this is the moment where he gets up and he just like lets in, I think 3 vampires, or maybe it was just 2, very casually, without actually like asking who they are. And we see Guillermo going outside to talk to Topher about this with blood spatters all over his face. So clearly he handled these two vampires himself, and now he is extremely angry. He goes outside to talk to Topher about this, and there is this like koi pond, and he is warned to stay away from it. It should be like repeatedly mentioned. Guillermo does not set him up. Maybe we'll find out that this was a setup, but he says more than once, and I think with enough force that he's dead serious, don't touch it. It's fucked up. Don't do it. And then he does, and he gets electrocuted and he dies. And Guillermo tries to fake that he's sad, but honestly, he's obviously not. And he even has to recognize that he's like sort of used to people dying so often around here now that in itself is pretty fucked up. So we have all of them gathered out in the backyard again to say goodbye to Topher and bury him. So this, every time that they have like a funeral in the backyard, I wonder like how much other people can see in, and how many like there's enough graves back there that I feel like this would start to gain attention. I wouldn't mind if that becomes a plot line for a later episode. But they start talking about bringing Topher back from the dead. And there's this guy, Wallace, that Nadja genuinely thinks is a proficient necromancer. And Laszlo clearly does not buy it at all. And I was really curious to see what was going to happen, because I tended to trust Nadja's judgment on a lot of things, because she often is like the sole voice of reason on the show. But what we get is sort of like, okay, so this dude Wallace can do some stuff, but it's not what he like pretends he's going to be doing. He doesn't actually like give much of a shit about it. And I don't know what Nadja has seen him do in the past that gave her so much confidence in him. But by the end of this episode, she seems pretty squarely in like Laszlo's camp, where she wanted to think the best of this guy, and he let them down in such a way that she can't ignore this was like negligence and purposefulness, you know? So they have to go and track him down. Oh my God, I forgot the pale people scurrying in the night. And it's a performing arts school. And there's like a production of Our Town in which Colin is very interested in. A production, it's like a high school production of Our Town with a Q&A afterward. And I really just want to know who voluntarily goes to something like that. Like, it has to be just parents, right? How old were you when you realized that your parents didn't enjoy coming to like your school concerts and performances and stuff like that? Because for me as a kid, I remember, I think the first time that I really realized I was in like 8th grade or 7th grade. And it was like some comment my mom made. And I remember her sort of stopping after she said it. And I think she realized she had shown her hand a little bit and she felt bad about it. But I had always assumed that my parents had as much fun with it as I did doing it, because I always enjoyed performing, you know, even from a child. And the idea that they like dreaded going and that it was really tedious and took so long, it was just not something that had ever occurred to me. I always thought that they were like totally stoked to see what I was going to do. And it was just a real like finding out Santa isn't real moment for me when she was, I think she said I said something about how there was going to be an extra concert this year for some event. And my mom like let out a huge sigh with her like eyes all big, like, oh, fuck. And then sort of stopped and was like, cool. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So anyway, this bit for Colin Robinson, I was like, oh no, I remember this. So here is Wallace, and he is here with this fucking cloak on. It is a whole look. He's got a lot of eyeliner going on. And when they come into his tent, he has all of this like all these like bones and beads and little like tchotchkes, but also actual license plate keychains. And they are like enchanted by these. This is a fun ongoing joke with the vampires, is that even though they have been around for as long as they have, and if you were boring, you could be like, oh, they've seen it all. What we keep doing is being like, I mean, they are super old, but they just really kind of don't get out that much. They don't do very much. They go out at night and they feed, and then they kind of come home again. And that seems like most of what they do. So there is a lot actually that they're missing. Never mind the fact that, you know, like if they're only able to go out at night, not everything is going to be open. So there's going to be things they just inherently miss. But the like little moments like this where they are so excited about license plate keychains, honestly, this being an ongoing joke, it really worked well for me. So they talk to him about bringing back their dead familiar, and he thinks it's Guillermo because Guillermo is standing there falling asleep on his feet. And they have to correct him that Guillermo's not dead, although sometimes we wish he was. And I feel like this moment where Guillermo frowns, Nandor tries to be like, it's just a little joke. And Guillermo says, got it. Nandor looks at him for a moment in such a way that it feels like he really senses how angry Guillermo is. And he's like, he dismisses it because he always does. But for a second, it does seem like he's like, okay, I feel like maybe he got really mad there. So he has to go and get the carcass, the cadaver, carcass. And this dude, he needs $350, and he's going to have to, they are going to have to like wait an entire night for this to kick in, basically. So he does his spell work, and it was like, I wasn't sure whether or not he was actually going to be able to do anything. But he begins with his spell work, the lights begin flickering, and I was thinking, all right, maybe we're going to find out that the lights flickering is actually a setup, you know, like you can do that. You can install little things and have a dramatic effect. Then he starts scatting while he's doing his, you know, I can't, guys, this was a thing that we would have to do in acting school, where you would have to get in front of the class and perform essentially like an entire monologue in a nonsense language. Or you would be given like a segment of a song and you would have to scat between verses to fill the equivalent like number of bars of that song as a verse. And it was meant to like test you, like to be on your feet with improv. And it is so, number one, so hard, and number two, so humiliating. Once you like learn to get over yourself a little bit and get really into it, it can actually be fun. But initially you're just like, oh God, you know? And this moment where he starts scatting, I was just like, man, this really just feels like we're in class, you know? So he starts doing this and he's chanting, and he's got his hands on either side of Topher's head. And then Topher begins to lift into the air and glow and shake. And I was like, oh, okay, so he actually can do this. And then he gets a notification on his phone and he starts texting back. He picks up his phone and actually responds while doing the spell. I almost fell over. I swear to God. I don't know why. You know why? You know what it is, guys? You know that thing I was saying earlier about how I have a really hard time calling out service people? It's because this exact kind of thing is something I've experienced, where somebody was supposed to be focusing all of their attention on a thing I was paying them to do, and they were absolutely half-assing it and not even trying to hide the fact that they were half-assing it. God, this gets me. And he tells them that it's going to take overnight. Life takes time. We are reversing the very nature of, but if you want to chivvy things along and we're all friends, I could do this for $100. And Laszlo just snaps at him. And they all start applauding because they all think he really did it. And as it turns out, Topher does come back, but he isn't obviously himself. Wallace, as contemptible a man as he is, actually came up trumps. And Nadja coughs and says, I fucking told you. And he coughs and says, you fucking didn't. So everybody's so glad that Topher is back. But then when we actually see him, he is a fucked up. He is a zombie. He's got a lot of qualities to him that feel kind of Renly-esque. Renly? What's the name? I'm saying Renly, like Renly Baratheon. Oh, God, you guys. There's nobody in the chat right now to correct me. But y'all know who I'm talking about. The assistant who eats bugs. So this dude is crawling all over the ceiling and hissing, runs up to Guillermo as if he's about to bite him. And Guillermo, he finally officially says, I am concerned about Topher. I think that something might be really wrong with him. And he walks in on Topher eating a live pigeon. He waits under my bed, tries to bite me, eats live birds and insects. I think he might be a zombie. And none of them want to hear it. In fact, Nadja is so mad at Guillermo for saying all of this that he tells Nandor he should punish him. These are the only moments where I don't like Nadja. Whenever she's picking on Guillermo. So yeah, this bit here, oh God, Topher eventually starts trying to drown Guillermo in the outside pond. Things escalate pretty quickly. And this is all preceded, by the way. Guillermo hears a sound and he thinks that it's a vampire assassin. It turns out to be Topher, and he stabs him through the heart, which one would think would do it, and it doesn't. He comes at him again, and eventually Guillermo has to throw Topher over the side of the inside balcony. And that also doesn't do it. And so I'm over here feeling okay, if it's a zombie, then probably smashing in his brain would be the thing you want to do, right? So we get a pretty intense chase sequence here with Guillermo yelling at Topher, why won't you die? And this is when we wind up in the backyard. And Guillermo is getting his head plunged into the koi pond. I will be honest, at first, I thought that this was Guillermo shoving Topher's head into the koi pond. And I didn't really understand why he was doing it, because I was clearly this dude doesn't need oxygen. Like, you can't drown him, I don't think. It doesn't seem like it would work. But no, it's the other way around. Nandor grabs him. He like comes outside. Your screaming disturbed me from my slumber. You shouldn't be putting your head in there. It's not hygienic. If you want to wash yourself. And he gets interrupted and starts yelling at Topher. I have had enough of this. And he snaps Topher's neck and chucks him at the fence. And he starts to say, oh, well, what can you do? He was a good guy for a while, but... And then Topher gets up and is fine and starts to attack Nandor again. And he has to say the same words, and Topher gets up yet again. Finally, he holds Topher down in the pond and tells Guillermo to throw the switch to electrocute him again. And as we see later, that also does not work, because they wind up having to take him back to Wallace. So then we find Wallace says, I must have used the wrong incantation, but no extra charge. What Nandor says is, you made up the whole thing. And he denies that. He said it was the right one verbatim. Now, the thing is, I can't tell how much of this guy is like complete bullshit, because he does make the dude like, you know, float in the air, and he does bring him back to life to a degree. I have no doubt that he was half-assing it, because as Nadja points out, he was texting. But I do not know if this is like a purposeful, I'm going to give them like a bullshit version of what they asked for because I don't actually know how to do what they wanted. I just want their money and I'll pretend I know how to do it. Or if it's I was genuinely doing my best, but I suck. And I just fucked up, but I didn't mean to fuck up. I feel like it's the second one, because he's still at his, oh my God, Jan is here telling me Renfield. Thank you, Jan. I was on the other tab watching the show, so I missed that you corrected me. Thank you, Jan. I really appreciate you. That was driving me nuts. Renfield. I think it has to be the second one, that he was genuinely trying his best and just isn't good at this and fucked up, because he's still where he was when they came to him for help. Like, I feel like if you are going to just lie to people and take their money, and the people that you are going to lie to are like, you know, vampires, you're not really going to stay in one place after you have ripped them off. Like, if you're going to con people, you have to be a bit of a nomad with it, I would imagine. So he starts whistling and sort of weirdly like summons Topher to him. And he says, I don't do refunds, but I'll take him off your hands and each of you can grab a free license plate keychain. And they are all super excited about it. They are so happy with their license plate keychains. All of them, of course, have names that are not available. So Nandor got one that says Steve. Nadja, I got Nadia, which is my name, but with a less exciting J, completely free. We haven't sold any Collins since 1979, mate. And he says, but you do have Condom. And he says, very, very popular. Guillermo tries looking for one, and he got Gigi. Honestly, that's not too bad. I feel like his is closer than anybody else's, because at least Gigi, those are just letters. Like, it is G-I, but, I don't know. I feel like Guillermo, like, that's not terrible. So then we see him talking about how being a familiar isn't for everyone. And he knows that this is a really hard job and he's asked to do a lot of ridiculous stuff. But because Nandor saved him from Topher, he proved that he actually really cares about Guillermo. And he says if he doesn't, well, and then he opens his mini fridge and there are like 6 steaks in there along with his yoo-hoo. And he just turns and smiles at the camera in a very knowing way. This is the first time Guillermo has actually like addressed to us, the viewer, that he is willing to consider hurting his master in any way. This feels like kind of a big deal to me. We've seen him standing there holding it. We've seen what's going on in his mind written all over his face, but he has never made it this explicit on purpose. And wow, shit. Okay, Guillermo, like I'm interested in seeing him snap. I'll be honest. I wouldn't be mad about it. And I should also mention that there is like a post-credit sequence, because after he like looks at the camera and smiles, we go to credits, and I was really glad I didn't shut it off, because oftentimes I'll shut it off right away once we hit credits due to how quickly certain platforms will start playing the next episode and they'll spoil you. And thankfully I left it on, and we get to see Wallace, and he's like shepherding Topher down the stairs, and he takes him to a workshop with all of these other zombies where they manufacture all of the crap that he is selling up in his house. And I really enjoy how Topher keeps yelling "Doze apples, Doze apples." And I think they're actually all making explicitly I think they're all making the license plate keychains, but I don't actually, there's one girl who's like stringing beads on something. So I think it's a variety of stuff, but for the joke, he is assigned to the license plates, I think. But yeah, so that is the end of that episode. Really, really good start to the season. I'm always surprised that I'm able to talk about these for an hour. I just have so many tangents. I guess that's what does it. But thank you, Max, so much for commissioning this. I don't think there's another episode commissioned at all. So if that doesn't change by the end of, this month, I'm probably going to have to cancel covering this series. So just like FYI, I don't know if anybody out there is able to cover another episode, but I know it's not easy to get slots, but it is what it is. So keep an eye out if you are interested in doing that. All right. I'm going on vacation from here as well. So, if you follow other Unspoiled stuff and you notice that there's nothing new on the feed for several weeks, that is why. I am going to Florida and I'm getting married, and then I'm going to the Caribbean, and I'm so excited. All right, everybody. Thank you again. Until next time, hopefully there is a next time. Fingers crossed. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.